Hey guys, tonight we drift back more than 4,000 years to a land where the river is everything. Picture yourself standing on the damp banks of the Nile just as dawn breaks. The air is cool, the mist clings low, and the reeds make a soft whisper that almost sounds like gossip among neighbors. Farmers stir in their mud brick houses, stretching arms sore from yesterday's work, preparing to face another day of coaxing grain from the generous soil. And yes, you probably wouldn't survive this routine. No iced coffee, no comfy sneakers, just you, a hoe made of wood and the pressure of a whole civilization counting on your harvest. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know where you are right now and what time it is for you. Drop it in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The Nile itself is your alarm clock, flooding and receding in its predictable yearly rhythm, giving and taking away. You squint into the sun rising over the eastern bank, and already the color shifts from a gentle gold to something harsh and unblinking. The smell of wet earth fills your nose, mixed with the faint tang of fish drying on racks nearby. You feel the tickle of mosquitoes on your skin, reminding you that life here is both generous and demanding. As you walk along the edge of the village, you pass farmers already in the fields, barefoot in the silt, chanting work songs. They move in rhythm, hoes striking the ground in unison, almost like a dance. It's hypnotic, and you realize how much their lives depend on this river being predictable. One missed flood could mean empty stomachs and desperate families. Historians still argue whether early Egyptians truly believed the Nile's cycles were divine will or just natural science disguised in myth. Either way, they treated it with reverence. Nearby, women kneel at the riverbank, pounding laundry against flat stones. You can hear the rhythmic thud of cloth and water mixing like a drumbeat. Children scamper about, chasing one another through puddles, laughing as they splash mud onto anyone too slow to escape. And there, scratched into the very stones where the women sit, you notice faint grids. Someone has carved squares, game boards, right into the granite, perhaps a board washer or a child waiting for chores to end. Even here, even now, play sneaks into life. A fisherman pushes his papyrus skiff onto the water, balancing gracefully despite the wobble of the reed craft. His nets trail like spider webs across the surface, catching the morning light. You imagine yourself helping, though honestly you'd probably fall straight into the Nile and become crocodile breakfast before breakfast. The fisherman whistles to himself, maybe a tune he learned as a boy, maybe something his father whistled before him. These little continuities make time feel less like a straight line and more like ripples spreading outward. As the sun climbs higher, the smells of baking bread begin to drift from ovens, flat loaves browning, seasoned with coriander or onion. The comforting aroma makes your stomach rumble. You pass a courtyard where a woman tends a clay oven, sliding loaves in and out with a wooden paddle. She notices you staring a little too long and waves you away with a grin. Bread is life here, but it's also social currency, payment, and even, if you believe some playful villagers, a thing to wager when sitting down for an evening board game. Not all is quiet harmony. The bray of a donkey cuts through the air as a merchant struggles to load baskets of dates. A pair of geese flap noisily, protesting their capture. The village is alive, chaotic in its own way, yet still ordered around the river's heartbeat. You find yourself lulled into the rhythm, each sound blending into the next like a soft percussion ensemble. And through it all, you sense a truth. In between work, ritual and survival, Egyptians carved out moments of leisure. They etched grids on stone, rolled carved sticks as dice, and moved little tokens in competitions that were both pastime and prayer. Even the earliest depictions on tomb walls suggest this. People hunched over boards, focused, smiling, absorbed. The quirky fact is that some of these boards were not portable at all. They were literally carved into the steps of temples, docks, or even prison walls. Imagine being so into a game that you'd take a chisel to sacred stone just to pass a little time. Archaeologists still find these etched grids in the oddest places, and you can almost hear the echo of laughter and muttered complaints about unlucky rolls. By now, the sun is high enough to sting your eyes, and you retreat into the shade of a palm grove. The breeze rustles the fronds, and somewhere a hoopoe bird sings, its call both comical and haunting. You lean against the trunk, close your eyes, and picture yourself later, sitting at one of those carved boards, moving pieces while the Nile flows on, timeless and steady. The first hints of Egypt's board gaming culture are already forming around you, not as royal luxuries, but as little scratches of joy in an otherwise demanding life. And as you drift with these images, you realize tonight's story will not be rushed. Like the Nile itself, it will meander, carrying you gently forward. You step back outside into the dust and noise of the market, where the pulse of the village beats a little faster. The sun hangs high overhead now, pressing its warmth into your shoulders until you feel the sweat bead at your temples. The air is a jumble of smells: freshly baked bread, dried fish strung on cords, tangy onions, and the sharp note of donkey dung that no one seems to mind. A chorus of braying, haggling, and laughter rises around you, weaving into a constant sleepy hum. Merchants squat on mats beside their wares, baskets overflowing with lentils, coils of rope, sandals made from palm fiber. They call out in voices that rise and fall, with the rhythm of bargaining. One seller insists his onions are fresher than the neighbors, even though they look equally shriveled. Another boasts that her beer jars hold the strongest brew, and judging by the sway of one of her customers, she's probably right. You weave among them, the smell of sour beer tickling your nose. Children dart through the crowd like sparrows, their laughter ringing out as they chase each other around donkeys laden with jars. You nearly trip on a goose that has decided the middle of the road is its personal throne. Its honk sounds so indignant you half expect it to lecture you on pedestrian etiquette. And then, amid this bustle, your eyes catch on something subtle. On a stone bench near the beer cellar, a faint pattern is etched into the surface. Squares, small, deliberate, aligned in a grid. You pause, tracing the grooves with your fingertip. This is no random scratch. This is a game board carved right where merchants rest between deals. Imagine haggling over barley by day, then passing time with a game by night, the faint marks recording countless moments of leisure. Nearby, two men are hunched over another carved grid, tokens placed carefully. Their voices are low, muttering back and forth. A few onlookers stand close, nodding or shaking their heads at the moves, like modern-day sports fans caught up in the play. The board itself is weathered, but the game is alive, its rules flowing more from shared tradition than written law. Historians still argue whether these were casual pastimes or sacred echoes of divine order. Watching now, you suspect they were both. The mainstream fact is that many of these boards belong to Senet, one of the earliest known board games in history. Tomb paintings show even pharaohs absorbed in play, which tells you how universal it was, from kings to merchants to kids scratching grids in dust. But the quirky tidbit is that some boards show up in the oddest places: temple steps, prison walls, even graffiti on limestone blocks. It seems no spot was too sacred or profane for a quick round, if boredom struck. You drift further into the market, past a spice seller whose stall smells of cumin and coriander. She winks as she scatters seeds into a customer's palm, whispering promises of stronger flavors. Next door, a potter turns a clay jar on his wheel, the steady spin hypnotic. His hands glisten with wet clay, shaping vessels that will hold beer, grain, or maybe even game pieces. You imagine one jar tipped over at home, spilling carved pawns onto the floor, much to the delight of the family cat. The noise swells as you pass into the animal market, where goats bleat and donkeys protest loudly. A boy struggles to keep hold of a calf, his laughter mixing with its frantic kicks. Even here, etched into the side of a stone trough, you notice the familiar grid. It asks as if the Egyptians couldn't resist leaving the trace of a game wherever they lingered too long. You find a shady spot near a date cellar whose baskets glow amber in the sunlight. Sitting on the edge of another stone, you feel the coolness of the shaded rock and the faint grooves beneath your hand. Another board, another reminder that this society, though built on toil and ritual, also carved time for play. You roll a smooth pebble in your palm, imagining yourself as a player, weighing a move while voices and smells swirl around you. The scene slows, the donkey brays fade into background noise. The air hangs heavy with the sweetness of dates. You rest your chin on your hand, watching the men still locked in their game, as if the market itself waits with them for the outcome. The grid lines under your fingers tug you into their rhythm. Square to square, piece to piece, a little universe of chance carved into stone. And you realize, even in the most ordinary bustle of life, Egyptians found a way to carry eternity into their leisure. Their games were not separate from life, but etched into its very fabric, waiting for anyone who paused long enough to notice. You step away from the Nile's glittering edge and into the heart of the village, where houses crouch low against the sun. Each is made from mud bricks, simple, sturdy, and surprisingly cool once you duck inside. The walls smell faintly of earth after rain, even though you know rain almost never falls here. The air is thick with the warmth of bodies and bread ovens, but there's a calm rhythm to it all. Families rise together, stretching on reed mats, rubbing the sleep from their eyes, and preparing for another cycle of work and rest. The first thing you notice inside one of these homes is how bare it seems compared to modern clutter. A woven basket here, a jar of beer there, a grinding stone with flecks of flour still clinging to its surface. Yet this sparseness makes the little details stand out. A carved ivory amulet gleams on a shelf, catching the sunlight from the doorway. A cat pads silently across the floor, tail high, already in command of the household. Egyptians adored their cats, and it shows. You can tell by how indulgently the family allows it to sniff the bread dough before it is even baked. Breakfast is a simple affair, coarse bread dipped in beer, maybe a handful of figs if you're lucky. The beer tastes sour, thick, more like liquid porridge than what you'd order at a pub. Still, it fills the belly, and for a society built on grain, this is as essential as air. You chew, swallow, and realize your teeth ache. The bread is gritty, ground on stone that leaves sand particles in the mix. Archaeologists know this from the worn-down teeth in ancient skulls, proof that even the wealthy couldn't escape that daily crunch. And yes, historians still argue whether people actually got used to it or simply suffered through. Either way, you're already missing your soft modern loaf. Children scamper in and out of the doorway, their laughter echoing against the mud walls. One clutches a little toy made of clay, an animal on wheels, strung with twine. Another child traces squares with her finger in the dirt, pretending to play Senet, though she hasn't yet mastered the rules. You realize these games aren't just adult pastimes. They seep into childhood, teaching rhythm, turn-taking, and patience. In that sense, board games are woven into Egyptian family life from the very start. The mother of the house crouches by the hearth, flipping bread with practiced movements, her hands powdered white from flour. The smell of baking fills the room again, a comforting aroma that seems timeless. She pauses, glances at you, and for a moment you see the weariness in her eyes. Long hours, heavy work, and yet here she is, keeping the household in rhythm. The father, meanwhile, prepares tools for the day, checking the wooden handles for cracks. He hums to himself, maybe a hymn, maybe just a tune to ward off silence. At night, when the heat has eased and the day's chores are done, this same family will gather. They'll sit on the floor with flickering oil lamps, casting golden halos, and a board scratched into the mud brick will come alive. Pebbles or carved pieces will clatter softly, voices will murmur, and for a while, the worries of farming, bread-making, and back-breaking work will vanish into a contest of luck and wit. It's easy to forget, but leisure was precious here. Egyptians didn't have streaming services or phones buzzing with notifications, but they had these small rectangles of squares, and those were enough to spark competition and laughter. Some scholars argue these family games doubled as lessons in fate, preparing players for bigger spiritual games to come. Others think, quite sensibly, that sometimes a game was just a game. The quirky detail is that even pets weren't entirely excluded. Cat paw prints have been found pressed into drying mud bricks, sometimes right across unfinished board grids. Imagine trying to set up a new Senet board, only to have your cat stroll across it, leaving its autograph for eternity. Some things never change. Outside, life hums on. Neighbors call to one another across narrow alleys, trading gossip while carrying jars balanced on their heads. The smell of onions and garlic wafts from another home, mingling with the sharper tang of fish left out to dry. Every household has its rhythm, yet they all intersect, woven together like the reed mats underfoot. By evening, the children return dusty and tired, parents are worn thin, but the glow of lamplight and the promise of a shared board game keeps everyone together. For you, the day has been full. Sights, smells, and sounds all pressing in. Yet as you sit cross-legged in the dim light, moving a smooth pebble across a scratched square, you realize leisure here is not about extravagance. It's about presence, about being together, about finding joy in the little spaces between work and survival. And as you roll a carved stick waiting for the outcome, you can help but feel that same anticipation that people felt thousands of years ago. The hush before luck decides the grin when it favors you, the groan when it doesn't. In that flickering moment, you're part of the household, part of the rhythm, part of a game that refuses to be forgotten. You leave the market's noise behind, letting the braying donkeys and squabbling merchants fade into the distance. Ahead, rising above the flat mud-brick homes, a temple looms. Its massive pylons cast long shadows across the courtyard, and even though you try to walk casually, you can't help but feel small in its presence. The air cools as you step inside, the chatter replaced by an echoing hush. Incense curls in thin threads, smelling of resin and honey, a sweetness that clings to your skin. Columns tower over you, painted with lotus blossoms and papyrus stalks. Each step you take makes a faint crunch against the stone floor, the sound swallowed quickly by the vastness. Priests in white linen robes glide silently past, their heads shaved, their sandals slapping softly. They carry jars, trays, scrolls, all with deliberate calm, as if they themselves are pieces on some enormous, invisible board. In a side chamber you find a group of scribes bent over papyrus. Their reed pens scratch faintly, dipping into inky wells. At first, it looks like routine temple work, hymns, accounts, letters. But then your eye catches on diagrams, neat rows of squares marked carefully, boards once again captured on papyrus. You watch as one scribe pauses, tapping his chin thoughtfully before adjusting the sequence. Perhaps he's not just recording, perhaps he's shaping the rules. Historians still argue whether Egyptian scribes actually wrote down formal game instructions or whether rules lived entirely in oral tradition. Some believe these papyri were doodles, or maybe mystical diagrams tied to rituals. Either way, the very sight of grid patterns in sacred halls suggests that the line between play and prayer was blurry. One mainstream fact stands clear. Senet wasn't just any pastime. By the New Kingdom, it carried deep religious symbolism. The board's 30 squares could mirror the journey of the soul from earthly life into the afterlife. Playing it wasn't only for fun, it could echo a soul's passage through trials and triumphs. But here's the quirky part. Some surviving boards are lavish, inlaid with ivory and ebony, clearly fit for royals. Others are crude, scratched onto stone or pottery shards, like the ones you saw in the market. That means both the pharaoh and the fisherman played the same game, only their boards differed in style. Imagine if the Queen of England and a London fishmonger both obsessed equally over the same board game today. You stand at the edge of the scribe's chamber, watching his careful strokes. He pauses to stretch his fingers, then absent-mindedly moves a few tiny pebbles along the drawn squares. The movement is so natural, so instinctive, that you're sure he's played this before. Perhaps he plays secretly in the temple courtyard at night, dice rattling softly while stars gleam overhead. The temple itself feels like a living board, patterns upon patterns, symbols etched in repetition. The walls tell stories of gods striding across the cosmos, battling chaos, restoring balance. Isn't that what a game is, in miniature? A contest between order and disorder, where dice and pawns become little echoes of cosmic struggle. You can't help but grin at the thought that a priest, solemn in daylight, might mutter curses over a bad throw come evening. As you wander deeper, the murmur of chants swells. A group of priests recites hymns in rhythmic unison, their voices blending into a steady hum. You feel it reverberate in your chest, as though the very stones sing along. The scent of incense grows stronger, sticky sweet, and a little overwhelming. You pause to breathe, leaning against a wall where, faintly scratched, yet another game board hides. Perhaps etched by an apprentice waiting for ceremony to end, perhaps by a weary guard who found stillness too heavy. Your fingertips trace the grooves. Each square feels like a tiny door, each line like a whispered secret. The longer you linger, the more it seems as though games were to separate from sacred life, but a quiet thread woven through it. You close your eyes and imagine the temple at night, empty of worshippers, only the echo of wind through columns. A scribe sits cross-legged with a lamp flickering, pebbles clicking on a board. His opponent, a priest, chuckles softly at his bad luck. The gods loom in the carvings above, but even they might be amused at this little mortal drama of dice and destiny. And so, in this place meant for eternity, you realize games too are eternal, etched in stone, whispered on papyrus, humming beneath the chants. They are not distractions from life, but mirrors of it, quiet companions, even in the holiest of halls. The temple's incense lingers in your nostrils as you step back into the sun, and for a moment the glare is almost blinding. The world outside feels louder, livelier, and just a little less solemn. But then you remember what you came here for, the game itself. Senet, the crown jewel of Egyptian pastimes, waiting like an old friend on a table nearby. The first thing you notice is how simple it looks. 30 squares arranged in 3 rows of 10. That's it, just a tidy rectangle scratched into wood, stone, or sometimes even mud brick. But simplicity, you soon learn, is deceiving. Egyptians didn't play for simplicity. They played for stakes, sometimes survival, sometimes amusement, sometimes cosmic favor. You crouch by a wooden board set out under the shade of a sycamore tree. It's modest, the kind of board anyone might have owned, with little pieces shaped like cones and sticks lying beside it. Yes, sticks. You're expecting dice, maybe knucklebones, but no. Here they used flat sticks with one side painted. Toss them, and the number of painted sides that land face up tells you how far your piece moves. It's half chance, half the rhythm of your wrist. You give them a try. They clatter softly, bouncing once before resting unevenly. A 3. You grin, already hooked. Mainstream fact, Senet appears on tomb walls as early as 3100 BCE, making it arguably the world's oldest recorded board game. The very name, Senet, means passing, which fits both the flow of the game and its spiritual associations. But historians still argue whether the original rules were purely about racing pieces to the finish line, or whether they carried deep symbolic meaning right from the start. The quirky tidbit? Some players cheated. Evidence shows markings added to boards, suggesting house rules or adjustments. Imagine an ancient Egyptian teenager carving a bonus square to make sure they win against their uncle. Cheating, it seems, is as timeless as play itself. You roll the sticks again, 4 this time. Your little cone-shaped pawn moves across the squares, one step closer to the end. Each square has its own whisper of meaning. Some are safe havens, others are traps. Land in the wrong place, and you're forced back, doomed to retrace your steps. The Egyptians might have smiled at the frustration, but they also believed these setbacks echoed the trials a soul faces in the afterlife. As you play, you notice others gathering around. A farmer with dust still clinging to his legs, a young girl carrying a basket of onions, even a temple scribe on break. They all lean in, offering murmured advice, teasing you about your rookie moves. The farmer laughs when your pawn lands on a cursed square, shaking his head as though you've just tripped over your own sandals. The girl hides a giggle, covering her mouth with the back of her hand. The scribe smirks knowingly, perhaps enjoying the sight of you bumbling through rules that he's memorized since childhood. The board comes alive. Every move, every roll of the sticks feels like a drumbeat, steady, inevitable. Pieces slip past one another, chase, block, and sometimes collide. When you bump someone's pawn off the board, the crowd gasps, then bursts into laughter. It's all in good spirit, but you catch a flicker of competitiveness in their eyes. Egyptians may have been practical, but they also like to win. The longer you play, the more you realize this isn't just a race. It's a story, unfolding square by square. The beginning is easy, a steady march. The middle is messy, filled with setbacks and rivalries. The end, well, the end is treacherous. One wrong move and victory slips through your fingers. Your hand trembles as you toss the sticks again, hoping for a lucky roll. They land awkwardly, one rolling further away. You lean down to check. Yes, it counts. 3, enough to bring your pawn onto the final row, where danger looms. The crowd murmurs, their voices blending like the Nile's current. For a moment, you feel suspended between past and present, part of a game that has been played for over 5 millennia. The sun shifts, casting long shadows across the board. Your pieces gleam in the golden light, each one a little monument to chance and choice. You realize this is why Egyptians loved Senet. It wasn't only a distraction from work or worship. It was a way to feel time itself, to measure destiny in squares and sticks, to make sense of a world where floods could bless or destroy, where the gods were both kind and cruel. As your final pawn inches closer to the end, you take a deep breath. Will you escape the board, crossing into eternity, or will you stumble back, forced to repeat the journey? The sticks tumble again, the crowd leans in, and your heart pounds with the anticipation of a roll older than history itself. The crowd drifts away, leaving you alone with the board, the sticks, and the faint echo of laughter still buzzing in your ears. You stare down at the neat rows of squares and begin to sense something heavier than mere chance at play. Each square is not just a step on a wooden track, it's a symbol, a doorway into something larger. The Egyptians never left things to pure luck. They believed in layers, in meaning beneath the surface, and their games were no different. You lean back, imagining how a simple pawn sliding forward might mirror a soul making its way through the afterlife. Each roll of the sticks isn't just random. It could be a judgment, a trial, a reminder that destiny is part of every move. Historians still argue whether this deeper symbolism grew over centuries or was there from the very beginning. Was Senet just a racing game that gradually acquired sacred weight, or did priests always see the board as a miniature underworld? No clear answer survives, but you're leaning toward the second option as you trace the grooves with your finger. One mainstream fact is that certain squares on the Senet board carried powerful meaning. The 15th square, often called the House of Rebirth, represented a kind of checkpoint. Pass it, and you were safe from being sent backward. The 26th square symbolized the house of happiness, a place of good fortune, while the 27th was dreaded as the house of water, a setback square where a pawn could be washed away, sent back toward the beginning. This wasn't just gameplay, it was narrative. Your pawn wasn't just moving forward, it was surviving, stumbling, rising again. The quirky tidbit is that some players, convinced of bad luck, carried charms while playing. Tiny scarabs, bits of faience beads, even knucklebones tied to cords. Imagine you're midway through a tense game, and your opponent suddenly produces a little amulet of Hathor, kissing it before tossing the sticks. Cheating? Not exactly. Insurance, perhaps. A way to bribe fate with a wink. As you turn this over in your mind, the board begins to blur into something else. You picture the pawns as little souls, wandering across deserts, crossing rivers, begging passage through gates. The sticks become scales, weighing a heart against a feather, each roll a judgment from the gods. You can almost hear the rustle of wings, the heavy silence of the Hall of Two Truths, where the soul is weighed. A good throw might send you gliding toward paradise. A bad one might doom you to repeat trials forever. And yet, there's humor here too. Imagine two weary farmers after a long day, laughing as one's pawn keeps falling into the house of water. He groans. The crowd teases him. Someone jokes that maybe he should have been nicer to the gods this morning. Even the weight of eternity can be softened by the giggles of neighbors, by the comfort of playing together in the lamplight. The air grows cooler as evening settles in. A breeze picks up from the river, carrying the smell of wet reeds and distant cooking fires. You picture yourself sitting cross-legged on a woven mat, pawns scattered in front of you, charms clinking softly as you clutch them for luck. The lamplight flickers, shadows stretch long, and the game begins to feel like a meditation. Each move slows your thoughts. Each setback reminds you that patience is part of the journey. Your fingers drift across the squares again, stopping at the final one. It represents the safe passage into eternity, the finish line that is also a beginning. To reach it means to escape the cycle of the board, to transcend both luck and labor. You realize that for Egyptians, winning Senet wasn't just bragging rights, it was reassurance, a rehearsal for the soul's greatest voyage. Historians may continue to argue, but as you sit here pieces in hand, the symbolic weight is undeniable. Every throw, every advance, every stumble, it all feels like practice for something larger. You close your eyes, imagining yourself not as a player, but as a pawn, stepping square by square toward the unknown, pausing, falling back, then rising again. It's oddly comforting, a reminder that even in uncertainty there's rhythm, there's play, there's hope. You open your eyes to the board once more. The night is deep now, stars shimmering like little dice scattered across the heavens. You smile, half amused, half reverent. Whether game, ritual, or both, Senet has drawn you into its spell, teaching you that fate itself can be playful. And even the afterlife might unfold like a quiet, steady game beneath the flicker of oil lamps. The next morning, you find yourself in a new setting, no longer the humble courtyard of a fisherman's hut, but the cool, shaded chambers of a palace. Here, Senet looks different. Instead of a carved wooden slab with a few pawn pieces, the board is now an object of wealth. Inlaid with ivory and ebony, painted with gold leaf, its squares gleam in the half-light of the palace room. You run your hand across the smooth surface, and the coolness surprises you. This is no game for passing time after dinner. This is prestige, power, and perhaps even a way to display one's closeness to the gods. One mainstream fact is that beautifully crafted Senet boards have been found in royal tombs, tucked carefully beside the mummies of pharaohs and queens. Tutankhamun, for instance, had several Senet boards buried with him, as if he might get bored on his way to the afterlife. Archaeologists often debate whether he actually played them during his life, or if they were purely symbolic objects to help him cross the divine finish line. Historians still argue whether these royal sets were truly used for everyday play, or reserved for ritual and funerary purposes. Were kings really sitting around with family and friends, laughing over pawns stuck in the house of water? Or were these gilded boards only ever meant for the tomb? The quirky tidbit is that some of the richest Senet boards had sliding drawers built into their bases. These drawers held the pawns and throwing sticks, neatly packed away like a luxury travel case. Imagine a pharaoh packing for eternity, making sure his favorite game pieces were tucked in securely, as though the underworld had a strict carry-on policy. Here, in the palace setting, you feel the game's tone shift. The laughter and teasing of village players is replaced by something more formal. The courtiers around you sit straighter, their hands folded carefully in their laps. A prince leans forward to make his move, pausing with the same seriousness one might bring to a council meeting. You notice how each move is watched closely, not just for fair play, but as if the outcome of the game might whisper something about divine favor. The board itself becomes a miniature stage. You see pawns inching toward the final square, and you can't help but imagine the parallels. A pharaoh doesn't he just want to win a game? He wants to be assured that when his own soul makes the journey, it too will find victory. Every throw of the sticks is a rehearsal for eternity, and perhaps a subtle reminder to all watching that the gods' approval is never guaranteed. But amid this solemn atmosphere, humor sneaks in anyway. Picture a royal scribe trying his best to keep track of moves, only to yawn loudly and get a stern look from the queen. Or imagine a young princess pouting when her pawn slides back into the dreaded house of water, stamping her sandal with all the drama of a modern child losing at Monopoly. Even within palaces, humans are still humans, and games always stir little flashes of mischief. You lean closer, hearing whispers among the courtiers. Some say the outcome of these matches could even be read as omens. Was the pharaoh destined for success or failure in upcoming campaigns? Did the gods smile on him through a winning throw, or was a streak of bad luck a gentle warning? Historians might shrug, but sitting here watching the careful glances and hushed tones, it seems entirely plausible. The lamplight shifts across the gilded surface, reflecting patterns like miniature stars across the squares. You trace them with your eyes, feeling the game expand beyond entertainment. This is the royal rehearsal for immortality, a way of practicing the art of passing safely from one stage of existence into the next. And you realize that whether it's a fisherman's humble wooden board or a queen's ornate golden set, the journey is the same. Step by step, throw by throw, pawn by pawn, you move across the spaces of life toward the waiting square of eternity. As the match ends, the pieces are gently gathered into the drawer. A servant slides it shut with a quiet click, the sound sharp in the still room. The pharaoh nods in satisfaction, whether from winning or from the reassurance that at least tonight, fate played in his favor. You glance once more at the glowing board, and it seems less like an object and more like a mirror, reflecting not just the fate of players, but of the entire civilization that believed the universe itself could be measured in squares and steps. Stepping away from the palace, you wander into a bustling workshop where craftsmen and carpenters bend over tables, their hands dark with stains from dyes and sawdust. The air smells of resin, wood shavings, and warm clay. Each artisan hunches over a project, shaping ivory, soft wood, and faience into objects meant to delight, serve, or endure for centuries. And here, amidst chisels, hammers, and tiny brushes, you find Senet boards in various stages of completion, some plain and practical, others adorned with intricate patterns. You watch a young craftsman carve the outline of a board with a delicate precision, tapping gently so as not to crack the wood. Tiny pawns sit in neat rows nearby, their surfaces polished smooth. He leans back to inspect his work, squinting against the light, and then resumes painting tiny decorative lines along the edges. The scent of fresh paint mingles with sawdust, creating an oddly comforting aroma, as if progress itself has a smell. The mainstream fact is that Egyptian craftsmen often specialized. Some focused only on dice, others only on boards, and a few were known to work with precious materials for the elite. The boards weren't just functional, they were also objects of beauty, sometimes inlaid with ivory, ebony, or even semi-precious stones. This meant that playing a game could be a tactile and visual experience as much as a mental one. Historians still argue whether ordinary citizens could afford any semblance of this luxury, or if simpler boards were the standard. A quirky tidbit: some boards were designed with hidden compartments for charms or tiny notes. You can imagine someone slipping a tiny scarab or a small incantation into the board before a critical throw, muttering a plea to the gods while hoping no one notices. The concept of house rules suddenly seems less about cheating and more about negotiating with fate itself. As you move further into the workshop, the rhythm of work becomes hypnotic. One craftsman hammers gently, another sands a surface until it gleams. A third carefully paints delicate hieroglyphs around the board's edges, perhaps invoking protection or luck for future players. The repetition of strokes, the gentle tap-tap-tap, blends with the warm afternoon air, lulling you into a relaxed attentiveness. You catch yourself almost rolling imaginary dice along a board in your mind, following the imagined journey of the pawns. You glance at the pawns lined up neatly along a shelf. Some are cones, others small human or animal figures, each carved with care. A small, cat-shaped piece catches your eye, grinning in an almost mischievous way. You smile, thinking of the cat paw prints found on actual boards centuries ago. It seems some traditions, the playful interruptions of pets, never really change, even across millennia. The workshop buzzes with quiet conversation. A younger apprentice asks for advice. A senior craftsman points at a misaligned square, and someone jokes about how even the gods would be bored waiting for so much precision. There's warmth here, a shared sense of purpose. The boards are more than objects. They're carriers of culture, lessons in patience, and whispers of the divine. You wander to the corner where dice, or rather the throwing sticks, are being made. They're carved from wood or bone, painted carefully on one side. A slight imperfection in weight can alter the outcome, but that's part of the charm. Players learn to anticipate quirks, reading the stick like a partner in a dance. The sticks sit neatly beside a partially completed board, ready for a player to arrive and breathe life into them. You imagine a soldier or villager coming in after a long day, fingers brushing over the pawns, eyes scanning the squares. The workshop, silent for now, will soon be filled with laughter, arguments, and the faint murmur of strategic planning. Craftsmen may never see the game played, but their work ensures its continuity. You realize the creation of a board is as intimate as playing it. One cannot exist without the other. And as the sun dips lower, casting warm light across the room, you feel the quiet satisfaction of artisans at work. Each stroke, each carving, each careful brush across a grid is an act of patience, of devotion, of playful reverence. For a moment, the world shrinks to the size of a board, the journey of each pawn carrying echoes of the Nile, of temple halls, and the laughter of families tucked into the rhythm of everyday life. Night begins to settle across the landscape, and you find yourself with a group of soldiers huddled around a small fire at a distant outpost. The smell of smoke curls through the cool evening air, mixing with the faint tang of sweat and leather. The men are tired, muscles sore from marching, arms heavy from gear, and yet here they sit, leaning in toward a simple Senet board carved from rough wood. The flickering firelight casts long, trembling shadows across the squares, turning the game into a tiny, luminous theater. The mainstream fact is that soldiers of ancient Egypt did indeed play games to pass long hours on campaign or during training. Senet, with its combination of chance and strategy, was ideal for this. While historians still debate how formally the rules were followed, it's clear these games offered both entertainment and a quiet form of discipline. Watching pawns inch forward, soldiers practiced patience, focus, and sometimes even camaraderie, the mental equivalent of marching in step. You roll the sticks in your hand, feeling the weight and texture. One painted side lands face up, two face down, signaling your next move. The soldiers lean in, their faces glowing from the fire, murmuring advice and teasing in equal measure. One man laughs when his pawn slides too close to another, joking that the gods must be nudging them toward mischief. Humor, even in exhaustion, seems unavoidable. The quirky tidbit: some soldiers carried miniature Senet boards with them, portable enough to tuck into satchels or under bedrolls. Imagine trudging across deserts or marshlands, armor pressing into your back, sand in every crease, yet pulling out a tiny game to pass the time. Even in the harshest environments, they found a way to maintain a rhythm of leisure. As the game continues, you notice the soldiers' subtle strategies. Some move pieces cautiously, almost ritualistically, while others take bold risks, hurling sticks with more hope than calculation. Land on the wrong square, and you're sent back, groaning along with the unlucky player. But these setbacks are met with good-natured banter, a shared acknowledgement that fortune is fickle and patience is eternal. You glance up at the stars, scattered across the inky sky like scattered pawns themselves. The Milky Way stretches above, a pale glowing river, not unlike the Nile that you imagined earlier in the day. It's almost poetic. Pawns on a board, soldiers around a fire, stars above, patterns repeating across time and space. You feel a strange kinship with these men, knowing that, like them, your own life is measured in small, careful steps, victories, and minor setbacks. A low breeze ruffles the soldiers' robes, carrying the faint scent of distant reed beds and river mud. Somewhere, a dog barks in the night, its voice echoing across sand and stone. The sounds mix with laughter, whispers of the fire, and the occasional clatter of pieces sliding across the board. You realize that this sensory collage, the heat of the day, the cool of night, the flicker of firelight, is what gives life to play. Without it, the game would be little more than a set of lines and shapes. Historians still argue whether soldiers viewed these games as preparation for battle, mere distraction, or a symbolic rehearsal for their soul's passage in the afterlife. From where you sit, it feels like all three. Each throw of the sticks is both a practice in strategy and a meditation, a way to pass time while remaining alert, aware, and fully present. The fire flickers lower, casting orange glimmers across the board. You lean forward, moving your pawn with exaggerated care. The soldiers chuckle, shaking their heads at your caution, but secretly they know that even the smallest, most deliberate moves can change the course of a game, and perhaps, metaphorically, of life itself. As the night deepens and the fire dwindles to embers, you feel the soothing rhythm of play settle over you. The sticks, pawns, and squares are more than tools. They are companions, teachers, and reminders that even in the harshest conditions, humans have always sought small islands of joy and reflection. Dawn breaks slowly, painting the horizon with soft gold and pink, and you find yourself wandering into the heart of a quiet village once more. The air is cooler now, carrying the scent of baked bread, fresh reeds, and the distant rush of the Nile. Villagers move about their morning routines with calm efficiency. Women carry water jars on their heads, children chase each other barefoot across sun-warmed mud, and a donkey brays in protest at a particularly ambitious rooster. In the midst of this gentle chaos, Senet boards are already being prepared for another day of quiet amusement. A grandmother sits outside her house, smoothing her skirt, and places a small wooden board in front of her grandchildren. The squares are neatly carved, though worn from decades of use. You notice that some pawns are chipped, some faded, yet each carries history in its wear. One child nudges a pawn across the board, and you see the same concentrated focus you observed in the soldiers and the palace courtiers. Play, it seems, is universal, independent of wealth, status, or occupation. The mainstream fact is that Senet was a fixture of daily life across all social classes in Egypt, from peasants to priests to royalty. Tomb paintings depict ordinary citizens playing in courtyards, streets, and homes, suggesting that the game was a cherished ritual of leisure as well as a teaching tool. Historians still argue whether these depictions reflect idealized versions of life or true everyday practice, but the frequency of representation implies it was widespread. The quirky tidbit: some boards found in excavations show evidence of cat interactions, tiny paw prints pressed into soft clay or smudged ink marks. Cats, revered yet playful, seem to have claimed the boards as their own from time to time, pawing at pieces and causing fits of exasperated laughter from their owners. You can imagine the grandmother swatting her cat aside, muttering under her breath, while her grandchildren giggle uncontrollably. You sit cross-legged on a reed mat, watching a group of women take turns moving pieces and tossing sticks. Their voices hum in soft conversation, laughter punctuating moves. One of the younger women nudges her pawn forward too aggressively, sending it sliding back several squares. A low groan, then laughter, as the rules of fortune demonstrate their impartiality once more. The game is alive, an extension of human rhythm, bridging generations and social divides. As the day stretches, you wander through the village and notice that Senet appears in the most unexpected places. A board scratched into a doorway lintel, pawns scattered beside a bench, even a faded mural depicting a family seated around a board, frozen mid-game. The Egyptians embedded play into their environment, marking everyday spaces with the echo of leisure, so that wherever you went, a game might be waiting. The air smells faintly of smoke and fresh bread, and the rhythm of daily life continues around you. A man drums his fingers on a clay pot while a child rolls sticks across a board, practicing moves even before fully understanding the rules. It's an atmosphere of calm, of gentle engagement, of patience cultivated naturally through repetition and attention. You find yourself drawn into the tempo, your own thoughts slowing, rolling with the sticks, moving pawns in your mind. Historians still debate the extent to which these games influenced spiritual thought or were purely recreational. From where you sit watching the grandmother instruct her grandchildren with a soft, affectionate patience, it seems that play, ritual, and instruction are inseparable. Each move teaches balance, judgment, and perhaps most importantly, the art of enjoying the small patterns of life. As the sun climbs higher, you lean back, absorbing the warmth, the smells, the quiet hum of the village. The board before you, pawns scattered across its squares, feels like a microcosm of existence itself. Some moves deliberate, some left to chance, all unfolding in the steady rhythm of everyday life. You realize that this gentle integration of play into life, work, and community is perhaps the greatest gift the Egyptians left behind, a way to navigate time, joy, and fate with steady hands and an open heart. By mid-afternoon, you find yourself near the riverbank, where fishermen pull in their nets and the water glistens under the sun like scattered gold coins. The gentle lapping of the Nile against the shore provides a natural rhythm to accompany the scene, a soft, constant pulse that blends seamlessly with distant bird calls and the occasional splash of a struggling fish. Along the sandy edge, small boards have been set up on flat stones or mats, as if the river itself invited players to pause and enjoy a few moments of leisure. A fisherman leans back on a crate, his straw hat tipped over one eye, and flicks sticks across a small Senet board. His pawns, carved crudely from wood, wobble and spin before settling. He chuckles under his breath when one pawn lands in an unfortunate square, muttering something about the god's sense of humor. Mainstream fact, it wasn't unusual for laborers to carry portable boards, simple yet durable, along rivers or fields. The game was compact enough to travel anywhere, allowing Egyptians to integrate leisure into even the busiest days. Historians still argue whether some of these boards were strictly for entertainment or served a subtle instructional purpose, teaching patience, counting, or even moral lessons. Nearby, a child tosses sticks with innocent enthusiasm, hitting the square he was aiming for, or sometimes missing entirely. The parent supervising offers gentle guidance, correcting technique while smiling at the randomness of fate. A cat prowls among reeds, eyes glinting, clearly interested in the pawns. A clumsy swipe sends a piece spinning into the sand, earning a shared laugh. The quirky tidbit is that cats were considered companions in play as well as household guardians. Some boards even show accidental paw prints pressed into clay, immortalizing feline involvement. As you sit and observe, you notice the interplay between strategy and luck. The fisherman moves one pawn cautiously, anticipating the next roll, while his neighbor takes bolder risks, sending pieces across the board with rapid throws. Each approach has merit. Each evokes murmurs and chuckles from nearby onlookers. You realize that part of Senet's appeal is this combination. While the sticks might dictate chance, the player's choices dictate personality. The air carries the earthy smell of water, mud, and reeds, mingling with the faint sweetness of distant figs drying in the sun. You reach out to touch the worn surface of the board, feeling the grooves smooth from countless plays over countless days. It's as if the stones and wood themselves remember every roll, every triumph, every setback. There's a meditative quality to this, tracing the path of pawns, considering the movement of the sticks, letting your attention slip into gentle focus. Historians still debate the degree to which Senet was connected to spiritual practice in daily life. Some argue that even casual play was imbued with symbolic resonance, echoing the passage of the soul through the afterlife. Others insist that most villagers approached the game purely as amusement. From your vantage, it seems likely that both perspectives coexist. The game entertains while also reflecting deeper patterns, bridging the sacred and the mundane. A sudden breeze ripples the water, sending reflections dancing across the boards. Shadows stretch long across the sand, merging with the lines of squares. You watch as pawns move slowly forward, pawns topple, sticks are tossed, and laughter rises softly into the afternoon. Time seems to stretch and contract with each roll, each careful placement, each pause for reflection or exclamation. In that quiet interlude by the river, Senet becomes more than a game. It is a thread connecting generations, a shared rhythm between laborers, children, and animals alike. You sense the continuity, the same game played in temples, palaces, homes, and riverbanks, each instance echoing the next. The river carries the sound of movement, chance, and delight, weaving it through the village, through history, through your imagination. And as the sun dips lower, casting long golden reflections on the water, you realize that in every square, every throw, and every subtle nod to luck and skill, the Egyptians captured a timeless lesson. That life, like Senet, is a delicate dance of patience, chance, and quiet joy. Late afternoon shadows stretch across the desert as you make your way toward a small burial site on the outskirts of a thriving village. The heat has softened, and the golden light glows warmly against the ochre stones and sun-baked sand. A sense of quiet reverence hangs in the air, and you notice subtle carvings along the tomb walls, hieroglyphs depicting daily life, rituals, and, most intriguingly, people gathered around Senet boards. It seems, even in death, the game traveled with Egyptians, bridging the gap between this world and the next. One mainstream fact: Senet boards were often included in tombs as grave goods, believed to assist the deceased in navigating the afterlife. Some archaeologists suggest that a complete set symbolized not just leisure but spiritual preparation, a rehearsal of sorts for challenges the soul would face. Historians still argue whether the boards were actively used by the deceased during life or purely symbolic objects for the journey beyond. Either way, their presence is unmistakable, a testament to the enduring significance of play. You kneel by a small, partially intact board, noting the worn pawns and faint grid etched into the stone-like surface. Even centuries of exposure haven't erased the precise squares. The tactile sense of the game seems almost to whisper across time, inviting you to imagine hands, long gone, moving pieces with care or mischief. The juxtaposition of life and death feels peaceful rather than eerie. The game is a comforting constant, a reminder that even beyond the mortal realm, patterns of play endure. A quirky tidbit: some tomb boards feature unusually elongated or exaggerated squares, possibly to symbolize mystical concepts or to ensure divine intervention favored certain moves. You picture an ancient artisan carving these oddities, perhaps with a wink, thinking that even in eternity one could bend the rules a little. The idea of subtle humor hidden in sacred objects is strangely comforting. Nearby, the scent of drying reeds and faint incense hangs in the still air. The wind carries the distant calls of birds returning to roost, merging with the rustle of loose sand and your own soft footsteps. You trace a line along the edge of a square, imagining the past players, priest, scribe, or child, moving pieces with anticipation, concern, and joy. The simplicity of the grid belies its depth, a miniature reflection of life's journey, careful strategy, unexpected setbacks, fleeting triumphs. Historians still debate whether Senet's spiritual symbolism was universally recognized or if it varied regionally and socially. Perhaps in the hands of a peasant it was purely diversion, while in the hands of a priest or pharaoh each throw echoed cosmic significance. Watching these boards, worn and preserved, you suspect both realities coexisted seamlessly. You notice a small figurine tucked beside the board, perhaps a token of protection or luck, smiling faintly as if encouraging the game to continue beyond time. The wind brushes against your cheek, carrying the soft sound of shifting sand, almost like the whispered movement of pawns sliding across a board. It's meditative, almost hypnotic, drawing your attention into a quiet rhythm that matches your breathing. As the sun dips toward the horizon, painting the desert with strokes of amber and rose, you imagine a player, long departed, sitting here centuries ago. Perhaps they muttered to themselves, hoping for a lucky roll, perhaps laughing softly at a misstep. The game, though silent now, still carries echoes of life, a gentle continuity that transcends mortality. And as darkness creeps across the tomb and the air cools, you realize that Senet, in all its forms, is a timeless companion, a tool for patience, a mirror for fate, and a subtle teacher of endurance and joy, softly bridging the divide between past, present, and eternity. Night has fully embraced the landscape, and you find yourself in a quiet courtyard of a modest home. The air carries the faint scent of baked barley, smoke from small hearths, and the cool, earthy aroma of mud bricks settling after a long day's heat. In the corner, a Senet board sits ready on a low wooden table. Candles flicker, casting soft shadows across the squares, making the board appear almost alive in the gentle darkness. You sit cross-legged, drawn to the rhythm of play and the subtle intimacy of this domestic setting. One mainstream fact is that Senet was played in homes across social strata, from peasants to minor officials. Its accessibility made it a shared cultural experience, a pastime that connected family members, neighbors, and even guests in casual competition. Historians still argue whether the frequency of play documented in tomb depictions accurately reflects real-life usage or is idealized imagery, but there's little doubt the game's domestic significance was substantial. The quirky tidbit: some households kept personalized boards marked with initials, small doodles, or even family crests, hinting at local house rules and playful rivalries. You can imagine children arguing over who gets to move first, or a father sneaking an extra throw when no one is looking, playful mischief that transcends millennia. As you move a pawn forward, the wood is smooth under your fingers, worn from repeated games over countless evenings. You hear the soft hum of conversation around you. A mother correcting her daughter's counting, a father teasing a son for a poor move. Even the house cat meanders between your legs, brushing against the board, inspecting pawns, and perhaps dreaming of its own feline strategy. The scene is cozy, intimate, a gentle rhythm of family life punctuated by clicks and murmurs of Senet. You pause to examine the board's squares. The 15th, 26th, and 27th squares, the traditional checkpoints of progress and challenge, remain subtly marked, each one a reminder of patience, fortune, and the lessons embedded within play. You can almost feel the ancestral echoes in the grain, the countless hands that trace the same paths, made the same decisions, laughed at missteps, and celebrated triumphs. Historians still debate how much of Senet's symbolic meaning was consciously understood by everyday players. Was it purely entertainment for villagers and families, or did even casual play carry echoes of spiritual practice? You sense that both exist simultaneously. The laughter, teasing, and concentration all blend with an underlying respect for the game's deeper resonance. The candlelight flickers, elongating shadows across the room, and the quiet intimacy of home life makes each move feel deliberate and meditative. Even a small mistake, a pawn sliding backward, a misread stick toss, becomes part of the evening's rhythm, a tiny story within the larger narrative of family and community. You imagine future generations taking up this same board. Children, grandchildren, perhaps even a guest visiting long after the original players are gone. The game remains constant, bridging time and place, offering gentle continuity. As the night grows darker, you feel the subtle comfort of repetition, of structured chants, of small rituals embedded in daily life, all mirrored in the quiet motions of pawns across squares. Senet in this domestic scene feels almost like a lullaby, soft, predictable, reassuring. Each roll of the sticks, each careful placement of a pawn, carries a rhythm that slows your thoughts, eases tension, and allows the simple pleasure of order and chance to coexist peacefully. It is, perhaps, the truest expression of why the Egyptians loved their board games so deeply, a companion through work, leisure, and quiet evenings alike. The next morning the village stirs slowly, dew clinging to reeds and mud walls, and you wander into the small market square. The air is filled with the aroma of fresh bread, spices, and the faint tang of fish from the river. Merchants call softly to each other, arranging wares on mats and baskets, while children dart between stalls. Amid the bustle, a group gathers around a makeshift table, a well-worn Senet board, pawns and sticks ready, the pieces balanced precariously in the morning light. A woman with a basket of dates sits cross-legged, moving her pawn with careful precision, while a young boy mimics her gestures with a wide grin. The mainstream fact is that games like Senet were often intertwined with daily routines. Farmers, merchants, and artisans used play to mark the passing of time, to socialize, or simply to enjoy a momentary break from labor. Historians still argue whether these public games were primarily entertainment or a subtle method for teaching arithmetic, patience, and strategy. From your view, it is likely a mix of both. The quirky tidbit? Some market boards had pawns shaped like local animals, ibises, crocodiles, even tiny camels, adding a playful, region-specific twist to the standard pieces. You imagine children arguing over which animal pawn is luckiest, or insisting that the ibis always brings victory. It's a small, cheerful rebellion against uniformity, a hint that even in structured play, personality seeps through. You lean in, watching the sticks tumble and pawns advance. The rhythm of the game blends with the murmurs of haggling merchants and the occasional bray of a donkey. Each roll is a mini-drama. A pawn lands on a safe square, and a cheer rises softly. Another falls into a setback, and gentle groans accompany laughter. The communal energy is palpable, yet never overwhelming. This is not a tournament, but a subtle weaving of chance, observation, and shared joy. Historians still debate how much the spiritual symbolism of Senet penetrated everyday life. Was this public play just amusement? Or did participants subtly reflect on cosmic balance and fate as they maneuvered pawns across the squares? The evidence is ambiguous, but in observing the care, smiles, and occasional playful cheating, it seems both layers coexisted seamlessly. A breeze stirs, carrying scents from bread ovens and fruit stalls, and you notice a few stray animals wandering through the game, nudging pawns or scattering sticks. The villagers don't mind. Laughter rises again, mingling with the rhythm of sticks clattering across the board. You imagine generations before, seated in similar squares, trading stories, teasing friends, and practicing patience. The essence of community, structured leisure, and quiet reflection remains remarkably unchanged. You step back slightly, allowing the scene to envelop you. The sun casts warm, golden light on pawns, squares, and faces, turning mundane activity into a tableau of calm engagement. Every movement of a pawn is deliberate yet unpredictable, every throw of the sticks a negotiation with chance. You notice how the market continues around this small pocket of timeless play, its energy gentle and soothing rather than chaotic. As you linger, you realize the simplicity of Senet is deceptive. Behind the small wooden board lies centuries of human thought, creativity, ritual, and joy. You see patterns repeated, strategies tested, luck celebrated and cursed, all within the intimate confines of a game. And somehow, the rhythm of play synchronizes with the rhythm of life itself, measured, gentle, full of pauses, surprises, and quiet victories. The market noise softens as the morning passes. Pawns are nudged home, sticks are gathered, and children scamper off to fetch snacks or play in the sun. The Senet board remains, a silent witness to continuity and change, a reminder that life, like the game, is measured in small steps, mindful choices, and the occasional roll of fate. As afternoon melts into evening, you find yourself returning once more to the quiet banks of the Nile. The water reflects the deepening sky, streaked with gold, purple, and the first soft glimmers of stars. A gentle breeze stirs reeds along the shore, carrying scents of damp earth, sun-warmed clay, and faint smoke from distant hearths. Here, a group of elders sits cross-legged around a Senet board balanced on a low stone, their faces lined with years but eyes sparkling with playful intent. The mainstream fact is that elderly Egyptians often continued playing Senet well into their later years, using the game to maintain mental agility, engage socially, and enjoy a sense of continuity with generations past. Historians still debate whether Senet in old age retained any spiritual symbolism or whether it became primarily a leisurely pastime. But watching these players, it's easy to see both elements entwined. You watch as one elder flicks the sticks with delicate precision, sending her pawn gliding across the squares. The others murmur advice, teasing, encouraging, and sharing soft laughter. The quirky tidbit: some elders were known to play blindfolded or with one hand tied behind their back, a practice meant to challenge skill or demonstrate wisdom, though you suspect it also produced far more comedic results than intended. You smile, imagining a stubborn pawn zigzagging unexpectedly, eliciting chuckles from all around. The rhythm of play is hypnotic, aligning with the gentle pulse of the river and the evening's cooling air. Pawns advance, retreat, and pause, each movement deliberate yet unpredictable. The elders discuss past games, recall clever strategies, and tease each other for forgotten tricks. There's a profound serenity here, a realization that play can bridge time, connecting youth and age, labor and leisure, this life and the memory of ancestors. Historians still argue about the symbolic meaning embedded in each square. Were the final rows intended to represent a successful passage into the afterlife, or were they simply milestones for victory? Perhaps both. As you watch the subtle gestures, the quiet smiles, the occasional triumphant exclamation, it seems clear that even if sacred intent waned, the game retained a sense of ceremony, a slow, deliberate rhythm that mirrored the journey of life itself. The air carries the distant croak of frogs and the rustle of leaves in the evening breeze. You notice a stray catpad softly among the stones, circling the board as though evaluating the game. The elders barely notice, absorbed in strategy, storytelling, and gentle mockery of each other's moves. It occurs to you that Senet, even in such simplicity, fosters patience, focus, and reflection. A microcosm of life's larger journey, each pawn a step along a path both literal and symbolic. As the sun dips lower, painting the horizon in a slow cascade of color, you feel a sense of closure. Pawns finally reach the last square. Sticks are gathered, laughter softens, and the elders lean back with satisfaction. The game is finished for now, but the patterns, the rhythm, the stories, and the small lessons remain, lingering in the air and in memory. You stand quietly taking in the scene. Across centuries, the same squares, pawns, and sticks have connected people, taught patience, provoked laughter, and provided comfort. Senet has traveled from humble homes to palaces, from riverbanks to tombs, weaving a delicate thread through Egyptian life. Its legacy is subtle yet enduring, a reminder that in small steps, careful choices, and gentle play, humans have always sought both understanding and joy. And now, as the evening darkens and stars shimmer above the river, you feel the quiet resonance of centuries, the soothing cadence of pawns sliding across squares, and the comforting reminder that life, like Senet, is a slow, deliberate journey, with room for chance, laughter, and reflection. The night deepens, and you let your gaze wander across the soft, shimmering Nile, the distant outlines of reeds and mud-brick homes softened in the dark. The gentle rhythm of the river mirrors the ebb and flow of the pawns on the boards you have imagined today. Every throw of sticks, every careful nudge of a pawn feels like a heartbeat, steady and reassuring, echoing across centuries. You can almost feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, the scent of baked bread and incense, the soft giggles and murmurs of villagers, palace courtiers, and elders alike. Even the smallest details, the wobble of a pawn, the playful mischief of a cat, the whispered advice of an elder, blend into a comforting pattern, a meditation on patience, fate, and gentle joy. Across tombs, workshops, riverbanks, and homes, these simple boards connect the living and the departed, the young and the old, the humble and the exalted. Time in this space is measured not in hours, but in moves, in choices, in the soft rhythm of play. You feel your own thoughts slow, matching the cadence of the game, the water, and the evening breeze. There is no hurry, no urgency, only the comforting realization that life, like Senet, unfolds one small, deliberate step at a time. The past and present blur gently, leaving a sense of continuity, reflection, and subtle wonder. So, as the stars shimmer overhead and the night settles fully, you can close your eyes, let the soft echo of sliding pawns lull your mind, and allow yourself to drift into rest. Each square, each throw, each moment of quiet attention has led here. A calm, measured understanding that life's journey, with its patterns, surprises and joys, is timeless, patient, and endlessly gentle.